Hello, you beautiful people, and welcome everyone. And great to see everybody here in attendance. Good afternoon, and welcome to Circuit Stream's VR Escape Room webinar. Super excited to have everybody join us here this afternoon. We've got a big crowd today. My name is Kyle. I'm the education lead here at Circuit Stream. I want to run over a few housekeeping items before I proceed with today's webinar. Before I do proceed, can you give me a thumbs up in the chat, a wave, a yes, a no? Can everybody hear me okay? Can everybody see me okay? Is all good. Eric, Jeff, Finn, Wilson, okay, Pradeep, everyone, thank you for confirming that. Like I said, my name is Kyle. I'm the education lead here at Circuit Stream. Just a couple of housekeeping items, and then let's get going here. So as you can see on the right of the screen, you've all already discovered we do have the chat tab. Please feel free to drop into your LinkedIn network, meet some like-minded individuals. We love a good community here, so please feel free to chit-chat as desired. On the top of the chat box there, we do have a questions tab. We are going to be hosting a Q&A session at the end of today's presentation. So if you do have any questions, please do paste them there in the questions tab. With such a big audience like we've got today, it really helps us stay organized and keep on track. Last item, beside the questions tab there is a polls tab. Throughout the presentation, I've got two separate polls that I am going to drop in. So I'm going to give you a bit of a warning when we do those polls, but please navigate over to the polls tab when I say so and fill out the questionnaires there. I'd like to remind everyone as well, this will be recorded. So for those of you who are located internationally, you will be receiving the recording. So if you have to jump off early for supper, or if it's bedtime wherever you're located, feel free, as you will get that recording and it will be sent to everyone. And I just mentioned this too. I always love to start off these webinars this way. Where is everybody tuning in from today? I myself am in Toronto, Ontario, Canada. We, Circuit Stream, are headquartered in Calgary, Alberta. I see Calgary there. There's Calgary there, another Toronto representative. Oh, Karen, great to see you again out of Mississauga. We've got Seattle, Westminster, Berlin. Wow, we've got a super international crowd today. I love to see it. Well, with those housekeeping items out of the way, let's get going. I've already mentioned this a couple times. My name is Kyle Nichols. I am on the education team here at Circuit Stream. I bring about 3 years of professional experience spanning across the professional sports industry and now the technology industry. I've got a fun fact that I always love to share about myself. It's that I am an NBA champion. No, not as a player. I was involved with the Toronto Raptors through 2019 when they won the championship. So that was a really cool story and really the time of my life. Tons of fun there. Today, I'm going to be joined by Usman, or Ozzy, as some people like to call him as he goes by. Ozzy is our lead instructor and an XR developer here at Circuit Stream. He's been with us pretty much since the beginning. He brings a wealth of experience, over 10 years of Unity experience, and 7 or so specifically within XR. Fun fact about Ozzy, he asked me to put that he was in a jazz band. I always like to say that it was a rock band because that's my cup of tea, my preferred music. But if there's any drum fans in the audience here, I'm sure that Ozzy would love to connect with you and chat about your passion for drums. Moving on, Circuit Stream. I've already mentioned this here. You can see that we are headquartered here in Calgary, Alberta. There's me in Toronto over there. We are a Canadian company founded in 2015. We were founded when we noticed a gap in the personalized training and education spaces. To date, we've trained over 30,000 students in XR development. We're a team of about 20 experts, as you can see on the screen there. We all come from various backgrounds, coming together now to help folks realize their dreams in VR and AR. Now, there's 3 things that we really sort of focus on here at Circuit Stream, and like today, a lot of what we do is centered on education and training. And as such, we are a Unity certified training partner. What exactly does that mean, Unity certification in terms of training? Well, training partners are companies that are approved by Unity based on their expertise, their focus on quality education, and their commitment to providing the highest level of training available. We're also an official Unity channel partner. What this means is that we partner to deliver training and app development services in the architecture, engineering, and constructive industries. I'd like to remind everybody up front as well that those who complete our course will get our CircuitStream issued certificate of completion as well. As I mentioned, we focus on three things, the first being education and training. Here are some of the organizations that we have had the pleasure of having in our educational programs to date. As you can see, organizations like the US Navy, Walmart, Boeing, Facebook, Hulu, Apple, you name it, we've probably worked with them. With this new technology, we've had the opportunity to work with some of the world's most exciting companies. This here is the program that started it all. On the left of the screen, you can see a quick summary of our XR Development with Unity program. It's our flagship product or service, course, program, whatever you want to call it, within the education and training side of our business. I am going to speak a little bit more about this course later on this afternoon, but for now, as you can see on screen, just know that it includes 40 hours of live education taught over a 10-week span, and it covers the fundamental best practices of developing VR and AR experiences within Unity. Now, our next cohort for this program commences on February the 15th, and registration for that cohort is underway. On the right of the screen, you can see our more intermediate or advanced program there. We call it the XR Project Accelerator course. It's for those folks in the room who don't really need to learn the fundamentals of programming or scripting with the C# language or Unity itself. We've taken everything that we've learned about online education over the past 5 or 6 years and created this project-driven program designed to help accelerate what you're already working on while also learning more advanced best practices in the weekly labs. Just like the accelerator course, more recently, we've launched a series of shorter courses covering specific topics in XR development, design, and even device or platform-specific cases. These courses vary from 3 to 6 weeks and are all taught live and online, just like the XR Development with Unity course and the XR Project Accelerator course. These are the short individual courses that we offer that I just mentioned. These are all launching between January and March of the new year, and we are super excited to be expanding our catalog of academic offerings as we grow. Now, one of the things that I always like to talk about that I think differentiates our training and educational programs is the one-to-one support that's included in our courses. In both our 10-week XR Development with Unity course and our 8-week XR Project Accelerator course, every student gets dedicated appointments weekly to work on their personal project. The idea here is we're not only going to teach you everything that we think XR developers ought to know, but we'll help you bring your very own idea for a VR or AR experience to life. Now, moving on, this is the second thing that we do and focus on here at CircuitStream. We are also a professional content creation agency, meaning that we help you by building the training content that you'd like to bring back to your organization and leverage there. We'll consult with you and your stakeholders to better understand your employee training as it exists today to identify any barriers to success. We'll work with you and your stakeholders to create immersive experiences in VR or in AR that will meet, exceed, and accelerate your key performance training goals. Alongside training and education and content creation, the third thing that we do here at CircuitStream is our XR platform. It's a cloud-based portal that we launched about 1.5 years ago. It's designed to help organizations host and scale their XR training content. Additionally, it also allows organizations to easily track, measure, and analyze learning activities. Okay, enough about us. Let's focus on today. Why are we all here? What are you going to learn? Well, today, Ozzy, who I'm going to pass things off to in just a few minutes here, he's going to talk about setting up your VR controllers, how to use the right inputs for objects in your 3D environment, and how to build simple interactions in your escape room with those objects. Think about, picking up or inspecting an object in your escape room. Before I do proceed, though, I do want to toss in a quick poll here. So if you could all navigate up to the polls section. I'm curious, I'd always like to know this. How much Unity experience do you have on a scale of 1 to 10? So I just tossed the poll in there, and I'd love to see what have we here. Okay, so it looks like we've got a mostly beginner audience today. There's a few folks who have an 8 or a 9. Ozzy, you shouldn't be participating in these polls, man. You're the teacher. Come on. Just kidding. It looks like we've got mostly a beginner crowd for today. For those of you who had said 0, 1, 2, 3 in that neighborhood, what is Unity? Well, Unity is a free 3D development engine for building games, simulations, and experiences. It's definitely the easiest way to begin making apps for XR. XR, by the way, if you're not familiar, it just stands for extended reality, and it refers to both augmented reality and virtual reality, sort of an umbrella term. Now, like all good things, how do we actually go from idea, from concept to finished product? Well, it starts with an idea. That idea is then developed in a program just like Unity. It's pushed through what's called an SDK, which also stands for a software developer kit. On screen here, you can see a few examples with, for example, the HoloLens 2 or the Magic Leap. Ultimately, once you've pushed your application out through this SDK, you can host your experience on the relevant device that you're seeking to build for. So without further ado, Ozzy, I'd like to invite you back on stage here. Today is an introduction to VR escape rooms. I can't express how lucky we are to have Ozzy join today. He's an incredible developer. He's an amazing teacher. Also, I didn't mention this in his bio, but I probably should have. He is literally the most patient person I've ever met in my entire life. So beginners, at any point, please don't hesitate to post your questions in the questions tab up at the top of the screen there. There are no silly questions, and I'm sure that Ozzy or myself would be happy to help you out in the Q&A. So Ozzy, take it away, all yours.
All right, thank you, Eric. Oh, sorry, Kyle. Hey everyone, today we'll be working on a VR escape room. Kyle already gave me quite an intro there, so I'll skip ahead. Thank you all for coming, and let's dive right into the workshop today. We'll get into the Unity dev section here. There is the link to the GitHub project. Sorry, it's a bit of a mess back here as I'm starting to move, but hopefully that's working. Okay, it looks like it's working for everyone now. Okay, cool. Let's take a look at Unity here. I'm gonna share my entire screen, and there we go. If is the text legible for everyone? I can reduce the resolution and make that a little bit easier to see. But if it's fine, then it's not even close. Okay, let's reduce the size of our display here and make that a bit easier to read. Where's that? 1080p. Let's try that. All right. That looks legible to me. Hopefully that's good. Better, not great. Dang, okay. Let's go one step lower. Let's get 720p going. All right. There we go. Hopefully that's legible enough. Good, good, good. All right, sweet. Down with the GIFs. Okay. Let me switch this over here. I'm going to switch over to the animation tab. We're going to just shrink down these windows here. Okay. Let's take a look at what we're making today, and we'll go from there. Maximize on play so you guys can see that better. I'm going to hit play here, and I've got my Oculus software running, and I just want to make sure everything is up about. There we go. And let me just turn this on. There we go. Sorry, it fell asleep on me. There we go. All right, so I'm actually using my Oculus Link as if it is a Oculus Rift S using the Link cable. I'm going to hit play now. It should work. And here we are. So as you can see, I am in this office room and I'm trapped. But if I am able to reach this, I can see that, oh, the code is ABD. Let's put that away. Let's throw that out of here. And now, if I look behind me, my collider is a little off, but go A. Sorry, it's like out of reach. A. Dang. So it keeps turning off as it's too far from my setup. There we go. Sorry, that's incredibly far from what I can see, but there we are. What SDK is this? I'm actually using the XR Interaction Toolkit. So the alternative is OpenVR, which I really like, but definitely able to use the XR Interaction Toolkit. Now, that being said, for all you Vive users out there, I found a great blog on helping that work for that system. Okay, so that is an alternative workaround to use the XR Interaction Toolkit with the Vive. Unfortunately, there's some problems with HTC Vive and the new Interaction Toolkit right now. But if you're familiar with OpenVR, you can make it work quite easily there. Have you heard of the VR Interaction Framework? Yeah, let's see. Yeah, and so they're working on making that a lot smoother and everything. But let's walk through the steps of making this work. I have included the assets for the office in here. That should look good. I'm just going to take this headset off real quick. Actually, I'll leave it on for now. Okay. Now, with all that, yeah, we'll just turn that off there. There we go. So let's start by setting up our VR controller and then work our way from there. So I'm going to create a new scene here, and I'm going to switch over to the default layout so that everyone can see it the same as I can. All right. All right. For your information, you can pull onto the screen to make this screen bigger if it helps. I'm using 2019.4, my Unity version. It should be very similar in 2020 though. Except the workaround doesn't work so well in 2020. Anyways, that being said, this is what your Unity project should look like the first time you start it, except all these what we call assets in your project folder. If you need to make certain windows bigger, you can. It just doesn't increase the size of the text as a side note. Now, with that said, when we look around some of these windows, we're identifying them as the project window, shows all your files. Console window will tell you all your errors. Your hierarchy window here on the left will list all the objects that are in your scene. These things, your camera, your lights, your 3D models are all game objects. It'll list them all off here in the hierarchy window. And you can create parent-child relationships like this, where if you move one object, the other will force to follow it and stuff like that. The inspector, where it will show you detailed information about a selected game object. So I select the main camera, shows me its position, rotation, and scale. The camera tells me all of its properties there. And audio listeners, pretty straightforward. It's just your ears in VR or AR, anything really. XR Interaction Toolkit, we're going to use a preview version 9 point something because the 10.0 doesn't work consistently in the Oculus headsets. So for now, we're going to use a different version here, and I'll show that momentarily. And then in the middle here is the scene view, our world as a developer. And the game view is where we just tested our application out. And the asset store, great repo for a bunch of 3D models, adding functionality to your VR apps and XR apps in general, and any app really, and music and sound files and a bunch of stuff. Now, with that said, a lot of controls that we can mess around with here, but the big play button is what we'll use today. I'm going to actually open a pointer focus just to make my mouse a little easier to see. But yeah, there's the big play button on the top there too. Now, the first steps to make this work, we'll need to go to Edit Project Settings. Let's bring that over here. So I've already installed it, but what it's going to look like is you want to go down to the XR plugin management, and you'll see a big install button. XR plugin management, once again, Edit Project Settings, XR plugin management. You'll see a big install button. Click on that install button. Once you've done that, you want to enable the SDKs for your projects, such as Oculus and Windows Mixed Reality. Remember, the HTC Vive isn't default here, so you have to go through a bit of a rigmarole to make that work, just like the link I posted in the chat earlier. I will post it again. There you go. So we want to get this in there, and if you're using the Quest, you have the Android processor for the Oculus Quest as well. So if you're working with Oculus desktop, like the Rift S, which I essentially am here, and then just the regular Quest, you use the Android one. Okay, so that's our plugins there. I'm going to close this window now. The next thing we need to do is go to our package manager. So we go up to the top left here where it says Window, and then we go down to Package Manager. In our Package Manager, we want to get some of these plugins, one of which is the XR Interaction Toolkit. Now, your XR plugin management should be installed now. Same with your Oculus XR plugin. Double check those, but the main one we want to install, again, once again, XR plugin management and Oculus XR plugin management, Oculus XR plugin. And we want to look for this XR Interaction Toolkit. Now, this actually may not be available by default. So what you want to do is actually go up here at the top under your project manager, click on Advanced, and make sure Show Preview Packages is enabled. And then we want to make sure we're in our Unity registry. So those two properties, Show Preview Packages and Unity registry, those are the ones we want. And if we scroll, I think it's all the way down or close to, there it is, close to all the way down in the X category before it starts repeating. Here, we're going to click on this arrow. We're going to see all versions, and we want to install 9.4. Again, like I said, 10.0 is having some problems right now with Oculus headsets. So I'm going to suggest you use 9.4. And then you'll just click on Install. All right, I'll give you guys a second. I'm going to repeat that real quick just so if anyone missed it, that is trying to follow along. There's a bit of a loading time going on too. So I would definitely check out the recording after the fact. Okay. So once again, Package Manager is open via Window, Package Manager. Once we're here, want to make sure that we are in the Unity registry. It'll take a second for all these packages to load first. And then we want to make sure Show Preview Packages is enabled. We want to look for XR Interaction Toolkit. Looks like this. We want to install it, but first, click on the drop-down, see all versions, and you want to select 9.4. It'll be here, and then install. Once you've done that, you can switch over to In Project, and you want to make sure that you have the plugin that you install, Oculus XR, Windows XR, XR Interaction Toolkit, and XR Plugin Management. These four actually are the ones we installed. I forgot to mention this Windows XR plugin was listed as well. But anyways, there we go. Our project is now VR capable. There's also AR, augmented reality packages in there if you wanted to install those. But feel free to mess with that. Now, with that said, let's take a look at our scene view. So I'm going to switch over to the scene view. And right now I'm just seeing, just a regular camera and a directional light, as it were. I'm going to actually delete my main camera from my scene. So I select this one, right click on it and say delete. Now, if I switch to my game view, it'll show me that no cameras are rendering. There's no camera in my scene now. Sorry, my connections have a bad time. XR Interaction Toolkit 9.4 and XR Interaction, any other packages? So in the package manager, really you should only have to install the XR Interaction Toolkit 9.4. The others, the XR plugin management, Windows XR plugin, Oculus XR plugin, those should be installed when you went to the XR plugin management settings in your project settings and you installed this with a big button that would be here and selected Oculus in the Android section and Oculus and Windows in the computer section. You're welcome, Scott. All right, so with that done, in our scene, we've deleted the main camera. Once again, main camera, right-click, delete. I'm going to right-click in here and then go down to XR, and I'm going to select our room scale XR rig. Now, does anyone know the difference between room scale and stationary? And does anyone know what the difference of 6 DOF and 3 DOF is? Let's see if anyone in the chat. Yeah, okay. Some people know. Yep, okay, cool. I'm not throwing out terminology that's totally fine. Okay, cool. So right now, the choice between the two, what does it represent? I will quickly visualize. The short answer is 3 DOF or stationary is the Oculus Go, and 6 DOF is the Oculus Rift and Oculus Quest. So you have the ability to rotate your view. You can turn around and all that stuff. You can rotate in a 3 DOF system, typically rotate. You could also just limit the movement, but 3 degrees of freedom, you can only rotate your controllers, only rotate your head. 6 DOF or room scale, you can rotate, but you can also move around and rotate around those axes as well. That's the key difference. Exactly, Rogerio. All right, cool. People know. All right, I'm glad that that's the case. Some people know. All right, but yeah. So what I'm gonna do here, I'm gonna right click in here, go down to XR, and select Room Scale XR Rig. It's a lot easier to make a VR escape room in a room scale setting, or it's at least more fun than 3 DOF. Now, if I select the XR rig, I end up getting an XR interaction manager as well. This will help me do things like grabbing objects. Now, under my XR rig, you'll see some of these properties are already set up for me at this version of Unity. Some other versions, you'll have to create these components, these sub-objects. Range of movement to interact with the game world. Kyle that is also a good reasoning for it too. But yeah, so we've got the XR rig. There's an option for tracking origin type. Hopefully it defaults to floor level for you. If not, definitely select that. Now, it makes it easier for us to set up. This will just be the floor. Now, if we go into the subcomponents by clicking on this drop down, these little arrows here, we'll see all the parts of it. And the bottom 3 are your main components. You have your main camera. This main game object is going to be your head. You've got your left hand controller. This isn't visualized by anything yet except some lines. So we're just gonna create some cubes, or I have hand models that we can use. And then we have our right hand controller. Same idea, just the right hand. A lot of these properties have been set up already for us, which is great. Now I'm just gonna periodically save our scene here. I'm gonna save my scene as our workshop scene. There we go. Anyways, so I've got these components by simply adding in XR room scale. So let's test it out. I'm just going to hit play real quick. All we've done so far is already made my head VR capable. I think I have my lines rendering. They don't do anything. We're actually going to get rid of them, but that's the idea. It's already doing something in VR. So great steps ahead. Now, I want to use our hand models. We'll provide these in the GitHub, but these are strictly for educational purposes. If you do want to use them, please purchase them from the asset store. Anyways, now, if we want to visualize our hands, we've got to make something a child of these two objects. These are the two objects here that anchor our controller, that represent the movement of our controller. We can use our own hands, correct? That is correct, Dale. You can use your own hands. And you can even animate your own hands too. You're using a headset right now when you went into preview mode. That is correct, Diego. I hit play. I didn't actually slide my headset down, but as you can see, I'm using my headset. I can see in the world as well. You can see the line right here. Okay. With that said, let's create some controller, something to visualize our hand. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create an empty game object. I'm going to click on empty. And the reason I'm doing this for more advanced people is no matter what scale I set my hand. So let's say I take this one and make it a thing. No matter what scale I set my hand to, especially since this hand, my left hand and right hand are slightly different. My right hand models change around. I think in this case it might be okay, but whatever I set it to, the scale gets reverted to 1, 1, 1. So let's say I selected these objects and I wanted them to be slightly bigger. These should be my hand models. I think I got one of them messed up. There we go. So I've got these two hand models and I want them to be scaled 2, 2, 2. If I was to use these as is, they would get reverted to scale 1, 1, 1. So just so you people know that, this system doesn't let you change the scale. You want to create an empty game object. So I'll create an empty. Position isn't really important, but I'll create an empty game object by right-clicking, create empty. I will then make one of my hand models a child of that empty game object. This is just good practice. I've already set up the hands so that you don't have to create a new parent, but just so you know, this empty game object I will call, let's go with hand left, something like that. And I will click and drag my 3D model and make it a child of this hand left object. I'll just want to actually position it at 0, 0, 0. Right? So now I have this parent object I can work with just as I would anything else, and this child object that can be independent, but it will help us visualize what we do. Now, so I've done that already for you guys. These two hand models I can bring into my scene. As we do, we should be good in that regard. So once you've created one of these, so I created the whole parent-child thing. I got one for my left hand, one for my right. What I want to do is save these as files. So once I've created them, I can actually click and drag them into my project folder here. And then you can see I've created some sort of visual representation of them. Again, in your project, when you're starting from scratch, you may not have that. So you may want to use some box or something. But there we go. I have them saved here. Now, why did I do that? I can delete them from the scene now that they're saved. If I select one of these controller models, you'll see that they have this model prefab none here. Both of them do. So I'm going to select my left-hand controller and I'm going to drag my left hand into there, just like that. I'm going to select my right-hand controller and drag my right hand into here. Now that I've done that, if I hit play, not only will I be looking around, but I'll actually have visual representation of my controllers. Now, there's some issues. As you can see, I have to keep my hand very far out. And about this distance, it disappears. So one of the settings we want to change on our main camera is this near clipping plane. I'll just set that down all the way. And let's save our scene now. Now, if I hit play, I can hold the controller right up to my face. You know, I think this is my left hand. Yeah. And it's visible the whole time, right up to my controller. So with those settings, love the look of the new courses. Thanks. Right. So with that setup, we have our VR rig created. I know it says XR, but we're really only using this for VR. And if anyone's heard the term XR, it's simply a reference to VR, AR, MR. It's an umbrella term. Okay, let's create a grabbable object so that you can add something interesting in your scene. So I'm going to create a sort of table for myself. And the way I can do that is I right-click in here, 3D object, cube. I'm just going to place something. You don't have to do this portion if you don't want, but just so you can see how to make grabbable objects. Here, I'll make a table, like so. And on it, I'm going to place one of my office supplies. So I have a prefab here, and I will place onto it an object, one of these. I'm going to go back to my scene view. I'm going to drag and drop one of these objects here. There we go. I got a bunch in here, so I'm just going to actually delete some of these. I'm going to unpack this prefab. Right now you can see that it's blue, so I can't actually make too many changes to it. I want to right-click on that and do unpack prefab. Now I can just take this mug, click and drag it out, and delete the rest of these objects. So I got my mug here. What I need to do to make it interactable is select this object, add a component to it that is, let's just add a mesh renderer, mesh collider, make it convex so we can see this green thing that represents the collision zone of it, and add a rigid body like so, as you do. Now it has gravity, so it's going to plop down onto the table if you were to lift it up. That's it. So this thing, it's got the mesh collider. I made it convex. It's got a rigid body. I'm going to add this simple XR grab interactable script. So I just clicked on, once again, to do all these things, add component, type in the names, add component, XR grab interactable. I'm just going to select that. And there we go. You can create offsets and such if you want, but there you have it. This thing can now be grabbed. A lot easier these days, a lot of these interactions. And the grabbing here isn't that bad. Like the grabbing that the XR interaction toolkit is like as good as the best game grabbing that I've seen. Okay, so the mug is there. I'm going to select one of our hands. So let's say our left hand. I've got the XR controller script, but I don't have, I have the XR ray interactor, XR line render, XR interactive line visual. I have all these things. What I really need is the XR, where is it? Believe it is the direct interactor, if I'm not mistaken. Yes, XR direct interactor, because the XR ray interactor. Okay, So right now you can point and click on this object and you can grab it that way because of the ray interactor. But if I remove some of these components, let's get rid of these components bottom to up, and then I add the direct interactor, I can grab the object directly. And you can create an offset via this attach transform if you want. Same with the right hand. I'm going to remove some of these components, line renderer, all of them except the XR controller, add the XR direct interactor. Again, this will allow me to grab objects instead of pointing and clicking on them. How can change the resolution? I did try to lower it as much as I can to a reasonable level. It's at 720p now. So as you can see, the object is there and I would be able to grab it, but there's no collision detection, right? I don't really, it's a little bit out of reach, so I might have to move this closer to me, but I don't have any collider on my hand. So I need something like that. I'm going to also move this thing a little bit closer to me. Anyways, like I'm saying, I don't have any detection on my hand. So if I select one of my hand models, you can see that nothing's really there. So all I have is these scripts. What I need to add is a collider. So I'll just add a box collider to this controller, set the size of it to 0.1, 0.1, 0.15. Same thing with the other cant. Add a component, box collider, make it a trigger, scale 0.1, 0.1, 0.15. Again, I'm doing some of this stuff rather quickly, I understand, but this portion of the grabbing isn't necessary for the particular exercise in our VR escape room, but you can use it. Like I said, the idea is you can use this for more puzzles and more interactions in your VR escape room. My example just won't necessarily use it, although you could grab the code. So with that done, I'm going to hit the play button. Both hands are triggers, I believe. Oh, the left hand isn't, so I'm going to make that a trigger as well. And let's take a look. And I can even grab with the other hand and trade hands, like so. And the throwing is pretty good. All right, so we've made an object grabbable. Unfortunately, the assets that came with the package are rather large, so you may have to scale them down quite a bit. There it is. Quick question: can we make a collider not a box shape, but as the same as the hand prefab? Yes. So an alternative to making the box collider, you could say, for example, my left hand, I could, instead of a box collider, let's say I add a mesh collider. And then if I expand that, let me turn this off. The mesh I use, I can set this mesh to something. So let's click here. And I can just select our hand, type in the word hand, think, sure, male hand. And then there we go. I have my hand collider the same. Keep in mind, this kind of collision detection becomes more expensive. This is probably fine, honestly, but if you start doing it a lot of mesh colliders in your scene, you may start to experience a little bit of processing delays. But there we go. That is your alternative. In my case, a box collider should be good enough. And there we have it. You can also add animations and stuff via actions if you take a look at the XR controller. And you can change what kind of input represents that. There's a lot of things you can do, but let's get into the VR escape room. So I don't know if you remember, and some of you didn't see what happened, But when I was in the VR escape room, I can hit play. I'm going to actually take my colliders and just shrink them down a bit because I think they were actually too big. Let's create these. Oh yeah, these things were too big, I think. I think I can set the controllers back to 1, 1, 1, but the box collider to 0.1, 0.1, 0.15. That's what I should do. I'll update the code. I'll update the GitHub with that. I think the scaling should I suggest you do the scaling on the size instead. My offset's going to be weird now. Anyways, not important about the offset. Don't worry about those. I just wanted to have those so I can offset where I'm grabbing things. All right, so let's try this out again and see how this works. When you picked up the mug, can it be rotated for inspection? Yeah, I could rotate my hand and look around it. I'll do that again here. So I got my mug. I can rotate it like this and do that, if that's what you mean. I have to go, but I can't wait for the recording. Thank you for putting this on. I will be extremely helpful. Oh, right on. So now let's take a look at our escape room. I've got to figure out how the heck do I get out of here. Now, I look around and my only escape, obviously you want to look at the door. And it looks like there's a lock pad. And then all of a sudden I see this here. And it says the code is ABD. All right, well, there's my clue. Again, you can make plenty more interactions than that. You can make a sequence, right? Let's just take a look at making a lock pad. Well, hopefully you guys were able to see that. All right. Let me know if that was visible to you guys. Otherwise, I just did that and no one saw. Yeah. Okay. Cool. Now, with that said, that's what we're going to try and make. We're going to try and make a lock pad here that is controllable, and then from there you can make it look visually appealing whatever way you want. I'm personally not a 3D modeler, so that's not my depth in development. I'm more of the mechanics developer, and these kinds of things I just put a plane on top of this 3D modeled notepad, and the plane had a transparent texture, and all it said the code is ABD, and I just slapped that on there. If I select this notepad, you'll see that it has a plane under it as a child, and that plane, if I made it like just a plane like this, you would see that it's just this flat square I dropped on it. But now with the transparent texture, you can see that it's like, oh, he put a code there. Okay, cool. All right. Now let's get into this. How the heck do we make this work? Well, simple. Well, it's the simplest lines of code, but both have box collider. Cup has XR interactable and rigid body. Both have box collider. Yes, Cup has an XR grab interactable and rigid body and a collider. Yes, Scott. Very, very close. So these objects, just like we did before, if I select the note, you'll see that it has a rigid body. This is for physics calculations. You need a rigid body to perform any sort of forces onto the object, such as when you're throwing it. You have the XR grab interactable script that allows us to actually detect it properly and initiate the grab. And then you have a mesh collider. In my case, for this one, I used a mesh collider. You can use a box collider on this one if you want. Mesh collider was just and once you add a mesh collider, you can actually choose to make it convex. Saves you some more some processing power there. Repeat the transform properties or simply move it. 1 second. I'd put a second object in, just a blank cube, and see if that falls too. All right, cool. Good to see some talk in the chat. I love that. Now, this scene, all the objects didn't really have colliders, so you have to add colliders to these things so that these objects with rigid bodies don't fall through the ground. So keep in mind the way you set up this room, but your room you'll probably have more control over. Okay, or you'll have probably thought out better on how you're making your environment exactly, but here we go. So how do we make these this lockpad? All right, well, let's go into our workshop scene and create something like that. I don't know what change I made, so I'm not going to save that. So we're in this scene. This cup is massive, so I'm going to just decrease the size of that. Anyways, the way we would approach something like that is like this. So I'm going to create a cube like this. This will be our lock pad. The base for it, I guess, the visual for the back of it. And what you're going to do is you're going to create a button. The way to create a button is I'd create another cube at the same position. And let's shrink that cube down like this. And on this cube, we're going to slap on it's going to do is be a collision zone, a trigger for me, like that. It'll help me recognize when something enters this area. And then as a child of it, I will create another cube. Sorry, just a sec. Let's check something. Okay, we have time left. I was worried. All right, so we have the cube here. This cube that I made a child, it's going to be the visual only. So this one, I actually don't want a collider. I'm going to remove that component. So this cube, that is the parent object, as you can see, I can move the visual out, and this cube will stay there. Now, the reasoning for this is that when you enter this zone, this visual goes down, but this collider is still here, so it knows that you pressed a button. That's the idea. So now, with that created, yeah, there's some shading errors with the URP, but I can't remember which setting it is, but you go up here, and then you go to URP, and then you upgrade your shaders or something, and that fixes the issue. It makes it all pink. The shaders break, but you just keep upgrading your shaders as it were. URP is better for VR. Yeah, so some are warnings, which is not, that's, you know, the minimalist version of the problems you can have with the with URP. So you're lucky, Crystal. Anyways, so there it is, the prepping of our button. Now, the next bit is we want to save a down position. So this cube, parent object, it'll be the center for it. This cube, I'm going to move it into a position I like that'll represent the down position. When it's down, I'm going to double click on this cube. When you double click on an object, your focus moves to that object. So I double click on this cube, and then I'm going to create an empty game object. You can see how that empty game object is at the same position now. This empty game object, I'm going to rename it to down. Oh, I got cap locks on. I'll just call it down transform. Now, I'm calling it a transform because that's really all I care about, is its transform property here, its component here. or type. I'm going to drag and drop that and make that the child of this trigger zone, basically. I'm going to rename this to my touch button, like so. VPN getting you issues. Okay, so I got my touch button. I've got my cube. I'm going to set my cube's position back to 0, 0, 0. That is not the position of the world. The position of the world 0, 0 is over here. But this cube, parent object, that's what this cube's 0, 0 is. And this cube is really just the button visual or the button mesh. That's all we're using this for. And there you have your setup. Now, I'm going to slap on our button press script on it. So I select my touch button. I'm going to slap this script on it. And you can see it's looking for all these things. I'm going to drag and drop the button mesh into here and the down transform into here. Now, we're going to go into what kind of key are we going to use. So we're going to say, okay, when you press this button, you basically enter the number 1, right? That's the idea. We're going to get into this momentarily here. Okay. Now, the script itself, I tried to make it, as simplistic as I could, which can be tricky. But these are the ideas. So you have a reference to the down transform. You have a reference to the visual. And what you're doing is on trigger enter. If you touch the player, if the player touches that collider zone, we put the button mesh to the down position. And on trigger exit, when we leave that collider zone, we check. The thing that left is the player. We set the local position of the button mesh to 0. So local position, right? Button mesh, local position 0, 0, 0, sets it back up. The only difference is we send a message to our lock pad. We're going to send this message and we're going to send the key. So we know the lock pad hears that, okay, they gave me this key, and we're going to set up the lock pad too. Now, this thing, I'm just going to rename this cube to lock pad, like so. Now, the next bit I'm going to do is I'm going to create a UI. We're just going to go with the UI text. You can use Text Mesh Pro or something like that. I'll just stick with text for now. It's a bit easier. I'm going to select this text element. If I actually focus in on it, if I double click on my text, you'll see that it's actually this massive thing. So what we need to do is decrease kind of the settings here. I'm going to do that real quick. So if I select the canvas, first I set the render mode here to world space. Ideally, you want to avoid doing things like this on the quest. And then the position, we're going to set, let's just set it to 0, 0, 0. So now it's positioned at the same spot as our lock pad because it is a child of our lock pad. This canvas, I'm going to set the width and height. Let's just go with 2000 by 1000. Still too big. But what I want to do to control the scale is the actual scale, not the width and height. Because this is more about like how good it looks, right? The resolution, the pixels, that kind of thing. So I'm going to set this to 0.01. The Z scale doesn't really matter because it's 2D. I'm going to zoom in on this canvas again. So it looks like it could be even smaller. I'm going to scale down this canvas even more, like that. I'm going to put this canvas here, make it even smaller, and make it kind of pop out like this. There we go. So now I've got this canvas kind of floating in front. Ideally, you want it to kind of be like flush with the front, but just a little bit forward. So there we go. Now, for the display, if I select the text, I can just give you some values here. Let's just set these anchors to 0, 0, 1, 1, like that, and just set these to 0, 0, 0, 0. It just basically makes it fit completely. Now, anchors and stuff could be a whole lesson on its own, but trust these values are going to be good. I'm going to replace this, instead of new text, I'm going to say code :space all the way over there, and it's very small. So I'm going to increase the font size like this. I'm going to change the color to a red, looks more code-like. And that should be good enough. I can add more to it, but that should do it. Okay, so that's one. And you can add more of these if you want, more buttons. You can just duplicate these now. It should be easy. Let's say I move, now that I have created this lock pad, what I'm going to do with it is I'm going to add this lock script to it. And you can see here, the lock pad is looking for a code. What do you want the code to be? So I'll say the code is 21 or something like that. The code display is over here. Where is it? Code display. I want to drag and drop this text into here. Bam. There's the text. Now, I've added what's called a Unity event here, so you can click on this plus symbol and easily do something interesting there. We'll take a look at that momentarily. But there's your code. And so the idea is if I touch the button gets pressed, and it adds some writing to this. Now, the code the lock is checking for now, I changed it to 21. In here, the touch button, I'm going to just drag this over. This one gives me a value of 1. I duplicate this button, move it over here, and then this one's going to give me a value of 2. So now if I touch this one first, it gives me 2. I touch this one, it's going to give me a value of 1. Now, it comes to the visuals. You can create the visuals as you please. I don't know if we have time, we can go over that later on, but that's not really that important at this time, as I want to get over the mechanics aspect. Now, this code, if I take a look at the lock, this is what's handling all these things. So I included some libraries up here, events, and the UI reference. I get a reference to the, I create a UI Unity event, so it'll make it easy for me to do a bunch of stuff without coding. And then public string, this is just defaulting to ABD, but you can change it as you saw in the inspector. I select the lock pad and I can change the code. And then I have this display, and whatever the current code is, what you've entered so far. Display is referencing this text element that we created. And we have this key entry function, and it's looking for a key. Every time you press a button, we're sending a message called key entry. So in our lock script, key entry happens. It says, okay, add to the current code the key that you received. Check if the current code matches your code. So if they typed in 1 and then 2, if is not true. So we skip this and we say current code is the length. So it's 2 digits. So like, oh, okay, so that's wrong. Let's reset it back to nothing and go on. Otherwise, we, if this is your first time pressing it, we just say, okay, now the display should say code : space, whatever you just typed, and whatever you add to that code. But if it is true, you did type 2 and then 1, current code is code, so you did it right. We're going to then say, okay, let's reset the code, or sorry, let's state that this is the current code, and invoke a Unity event. So run the Unity event. Make the Unity event do whatever you want it to do that you made it do in Unity, whether that's turning on a light or something else. In my case, it was an animation of a door opening, but yours can be, whatever you want. It could even be to, turn a object blue if you wanted. It could be anything. Now, that's why I'm doing it via a Unity event, so you guys get more customization with it rather than coding those things. You can just drag and drop things and make it work that way. Take care, Francis. Now, with that said, the lock pad has the references it needs. It's not doing anything right now, so we need to make sure that it does. Now, to make sure that this works, because right now we have the ability to touch the buttons and have the code display, the XR rig, we have to make sure that the hands have colliders And now there's a special thing. In our code, we were checking if the player is tagged, if it's tagged as player. The other thing that touches is tagged as player, but our hands are not. So we need to change their tags to player. This is a great way to identify objects. So we want to tell our controllers that they're the player. This way our code will know that, okay, yeah, the player's hand just did it. Now, let's make something happen. Last time we did a whole, door opening. But let's say we want this cup to do something. So how can we make this cup do something? If we select our lock pad, we go to the lock script, list is empty. I can hit plus here and just drag and drop objects into there. So let's say the mug. Nope, mug. There we go. It says no function here. Click on this, and then I can select anything about this object. So this object, if I select it, you'll see it has a bunch of components. So now, if I take a look at my lock pad, now that I dragged in a reference, I can just directly access all of these things. So one thing could be to, let's say, select the mesh renderer and go to bool enabled, or change the material, things like this. So I could say, okay, let's take the material and then let's change it to something else. Let's change it to, let's say this thing all of a sudden, right? Let's save this scene, and this will be interesting. I'm going to just go in there, touch these two things, ideally. Just make that hopefully not too far from me. So I'm going to move myself over, or I'm going to move, let's just set this over here real quick. I am going to move over my XR rig to over here. I'm just going to touch this. Oh, I've got to make sure I've got all the steps down here. So these buttons are triggered. Oh, right. So when you're doing an on-trigger event, one of the objects at least needs a rigid body. And we got to make sure that this has a reference to the lock pad. So let's give these two touch buttons rigid bodies. And just so that they don't fall down due to gravity, one of the properties is to make it kinematic. You should try and put these onto your hands as well for other reasons, but you don't have to. So let's say the touch button now has a rigid body and we made it kinematic. We can turn off use gravity, as that's kind of a waste on a kinematic object. Kinematic objects basically don't receive forces. And then you can see that the script that it has is looking for the lock pad. So I'm going to drag and drop the lock pad in there, and it's going to get a reference to that game object. Now it should be good. Let's try that this time. And once again, I've got to move my guy over here. Dang it. I dropped the cup. Let's see if I can get the mug up here. I know it's flying now. It's flying fast down. That's happening. One sec. Let me move that over. I'm gonna move all these things over a little bit. There we go. There we go. So if I touch this, sorry, tracking. So I touch this, I get the number 2. I touch this, I get the number 1. And you saw that when I did 2, 1, it changed the cup material. And then, it's worked, so we're all golden. And I limited the size there. You can increase the limit or just remove the truncation if you want to mess around with the UI element. So for example, the lock pad, I can change the text such that it allows overflow, and then you can see how it goes on forever. But there you go. Oh, there's this error with the input class. If you wanted to mess with that, you go to edit, project settings. This isn't necessary, but you can address that. I think it's under the input manager. Anyways, I have to look for that setting. I didn't enable that earlier, but not an issue yet. I think it is in the package manager. There it is. So you go to the package manager, XR plugin management, and you can import these other things. Which one was it? XR interaction toolkit. And those should handle the errors. But again, not really important for this stuff, but you definitely add to it. Let's see. I double click on one of these, event system. Let's see here. I'm gonna get out of play mode. When you see an error, generally go to the first one. Oh, this is about the Unity input class. Okay. This is about the original input, not to do with XR. Okay, that's fine. So if one wanted to utilize different methods, triggering an object component, changing aside from the code box input, we would need to learn C# correct or find other XR interactions, of course. Congrats for your day. Oh, thank you, Zoe. So there is quite a few things you can do without coding. There's also Bolt, which is a visual scripting language. You also have Unity events. So you can find packages with a lot of Unity events, and the XR interaction toolkit lets you grab things as well. Is it better to create all the assets in Unity, or could you create the assets in another software? I would generally create them in another software, but it depends the level of detail you need them to. You have things in Unity. If you go to the package manager, you have Pro Builder, which you can make, reasonable geometry out of that. I wouldn't make like a human being out of that, but you could create like a basic ramp and these kinds of things. You can make some decent levels with that. Or does that make the project too heavy with polygons? Well, again, yeah, it depends what you need out of your project. But anyways, that handles the interaction there. And beyond that, like adding some graphics to these things, you have to be careful because let's say, for example, I go to my materials folder, I add one of these things to it. You can see how that makes everything look a little weird. So what I do as a technique is I add a quad to it and just put it in front of it and then drop this onto the quad. And then, you can make that. I would make it actually unlit, transparent, and then it's just like you have the letter A. You can plop that on there and just position it such that it's kind of essentially on it, that kind of thing. That's the idea. I don't have the number 1 here, but that's another way to do it. All right, well, I hope that was informative. I just punched my controller. Okay, that's good. And stick around. We're going to do a Q&A period momentarily. But this system gives you a framework as if with lock pads, because we have Unity events with which you can, as you saw, do that, unlock and start an animation of a door opening. In the class, we go into animations a lot more and all these concepts in more detail. And but with Unity events, again, this framework should let you do anything with lockpad. Hit plus, drag and drop an object in here, where it says no function. You can select all of its components and not do anything, but do a lot of things. All right. Thank you all for attending. I'm going to hand it off to Kyle. Stick around. We're going to talk in the Q&A period after this.
Awesome. Thanks, Ozzy. Team, for those of you who didn't have to run to a work meeting and are still with us, can you hear me? Can you see me? Is all good? Everything is okay? Please let me know. Awesome. Okay, let me just share my screen here once again, super quick. Just a moment. There we go. Okay, Ozzy, thanks again. Awesome. Love to see you coming up with creative new workshop ideas. You really never fail to impress. Though I do have a piece of advice. I hope that your bank pin is a little bit more complicated than 124, but that's just a personal aside. All kidding aside, love to see the work that you do. And, I can see that backstage we've had a few questions that were asked throughout Ozzy's presentation. I want to make sure that we can address them all. So I'm going to take just a few more minutes here to wrap things up before re-inviting Ozzy back on stage to assist with these questions. As a reminder, while I'm talking here, if there are any outstanding questions that you've got, please feel free to paste those in the questions tab so we don't miss them. Also, another quick reminder, I know that we flew through the content this afternoon. We are going to be sending the recording of this workshop to everyone who signed up. You're going to have access to the recording as well as the resources that Ozzy demonstrated as well. So the game objects and that type of thing that you can drop into your scene. Before I proceed, though, I've got one more poll that I'm going to post in the polls tab here. So if you could navigate up there, please do so now. On a scale of 0 to 10, oh, pardon me. I'm just going to publish that here right now. On a scale of 0 to 10, how likely are you to recommend this workshop? The poll is in there now, so please take a moment and just go in there. And it really helps us out to see if we should do these types of workshops again. Much appreciated. Okay, moving on. If you've enjoyed learning about developing VR apps, AR apps in Unity today, we would love to have you or your team join one of the educational programs that we offer here at CircuitStream. No matter who you are or what your current skill set is, we can help. As you can see on the screen here, our students have gone to do some pretty amazing things after beginning their journeys in XR with us. Mike Oakes on the left, he took our 10-week course a couple of years ago. And just last month, he actually started as a software engineer at Unity. So, good for Mike, and amazing to see what things he is doing there. Jennifer, she took our course actually just this year, and she's actually been recently admitted to the Oculus Launchpad program to continue her training and education there, and also seek some funding around the prototype that she built in our course. Matt DeLello, too, he went a bit of a different direction, but he actually opened his own XR design studio. So super exciting for him, and he's doing some amazing work there. As a reminder, the XR Development with Unity course is the flagship program that we have to offer here at CircuitStream. It's designed to teach you the core fundamentals, how to build your own VR or AR experiences from scratch using the Unity engine. It's all taught live and online, just like today, with instructors, including Ozzy. He teaches this course. It includes 40 hours of education taught over 10 weeks, as well as 10 hours worth of one-to-one appointments that you can use however you'd like, but know that we would love to help you bring your very own project idea to life. Our course tuition fee for this program is $3,950, and our next cohort gets started on the 15th of February in the new year. Again, it's all about teaching you the fundamentals for making these applications from scratch. We do cover the C# programming language and the fundamentals that you need in addition to the XR interaction toolkit that we used and leveraged today. It includes 4 hours of class per week. So that's 3 hours of class per week for the 10 weeks, as well as an hour every week with an instructor just like Ozzy to work on a personal project. No experience is required, so beginners, please have no fear. We've helped tons of beginners, and we would love to help you too. Now, moving on, if you're listening to me talk about this particular program and you're thinking to yourself, you know what, hey Kyle, I'm already proficient in Unity. I'm not a beginner in C#, but I'm totally blown away by Ozzy's teaching skills. I have to continue my learning with CircuitStream. First of all, we're very flattered, and we should definitely, connect on LinkedIn and chat after this workshop today. But second of all, we do have another program for you. It's called the XR Project Accelerator. It's an 8-week course taught live and online, just like the 10-week course. And it has weekly labs that we leverage to help you continue your applied learning and best practices. Really, in this course, the star of the show is the amount of one-to-one support that you get in the program. Each student here gets 3 weekly appointments of an hour each, where we can help you take a prototype that you've got, that you've been working on, to really bring it to the next level, commercialize it, build a business around it. The course fee for this program is $4,450, and our next cohort is actually just around the corner, starting on January 5th. We do offer payment plans for both the XR Development with Unity course and the XR Project Accelerator course, so feel free to take advantage of those if you are looking at enrolling. Now, one of the things that I haven't mentioned very much today, but it's something that we really enjoy doing, is team training. We do have a catalog that's available for download on our website. So basically, if your organization is making a commitment to building VR or AR apps in the near future and would like to upskill or send a few team members into our programs, we can definitely help. As I mentioned, we do have a catalog of pre-existing programs that we offer to teams in private training sessions. The other interesting thing to note about our team training offerings is that we can be flexible on the content taught to meet your learning needs. In other words, we can create something custom if what we already offer doesn't align with your learning goals. Again, we do also have shorter individual courses. These vary from 3 to 6 weeks. They're all part-time, they're all online. They do all have certifications associated with them as well. And here's the list. They start in January, I think at the beginning, the C# scripting fundamentals short course, for example. And we do have a few other ones beginning in March as well. Now, last thing before I invite Ozzy on stage here once again, this is our admissions team. So behind the scenes, I've got my colleagues Steph and Vlad, who have both been active in the chat today. And once again, my name is Kyle. We handle the administration and the admissions for all of our academic programs here at CircuitStream. One of the things that I would like to say, we work a little bit different than most other companies in that we're very invested in your future and are happy to meet with you to discuss your learning goals, your long-term plans in the XR industry, your current skill set. Really, we're invested in your success from the very beginning. So if you have any other questions about your long-term plans, your goals, your current skill set, our courses, please feel free to get in touch with any of the three of us, as we would be more than happy to help out. With all of that being said, let's begin this Q&A session. I'd like to invite Ozzy back on stage here to address anything that hasn't been answered already. Feel free to continue posting your questions in the questions tab, and we'll get right to them. We do have about 15 minutes, so hopefully we can get through all of your questions here, but we will see. So there's Ozzy once again. Ozzy, let's tackle some of these questions here together. Is there anything that in particular catches your eye while we're looking through here? I think you can filter by what's been upvoted or what's been answered.
Oh, okay. Let's go with that. What kinds of graphical style assets would you suggest for the Quest? Any suggested resource for searching the Quest-friendly assets? So generally, a lot of assets will say that they're VR ready. Those are probably your best bet. But I have a great non-family friendly video on optimization on the Quest, and it covers quite a few concepts, more so giving you resources to those concepts to be covered in detail, which I find quite useful instead. So I'm going to just post a link to that video in the chat. Worth checking that out. Lighting is generally your biggest optimization site, but hopefully this helps you figure out where to best do that kind of thing.
Amazing.
Following, and just as a side note, you do not need to follow everything the video says, because if you do everything it says, your application might look like crap. So just be cognizant of that. Will this project work in Unity 2020? Yep, it should. For the Oculus, it should, but you'll have to do that workaround for the Vive that I linked earlier. is it better to create all the assets in Unity, or could you create the assets in another software and bring it into Unity? Or does that make the project too heavy with polygons? 99.99% of projects are going to be filled with assets from outside of Unity. Generally speaking, the assets within Unity, the primitives is what they're called, are used for demoing your application, for trying out mechanics. Generally speaking, I don't come across people using those in a final project.
That's a good point. It's a really good point.
Can you use images somehow from a real space and then put objects in it to oh, I lost track of that.
It's all good. I got it here, Ozzy. Can you
Okay.
use images somehow from a real space and then put objects in it to interact with? Basically, can you create an environment from an image? Can you render that object
Right.
and interact with what you've brought into Unity?
So there is a lot of spatial mapping techniques. If you have the iPad 11, or sorry, the iPhone 12 and the latest iPads, they have LiDAR tracking, LiDAR detection, with which you can actually color and map out your environment in 3D, bring that into Unity, and do what you may with that. And if you bring it into a 3D modeling software, you can break up the mesh into parts. Like you break up a cup from the environment and do whatever. Augmented reality, it's even better for AR, where you can use the environment and memorize it on your app and use it as what's called an area target with Vuforia, or have some local memorization, some point cloud data as well on AR Foundation with AR Kit or AR Core. Not AR Core, AR Kit though.
Awesome. Looks like Eric in the chat. Great to see you, Eric.
Hey,
he's done it with his apartment.
It's impressive,
super,
yeah.
Super cool.
Yeah. Apart from that, if you're taking pictures, it's gonna be more or less you making 3D models and applying those textures to it. That's definitely a lot harder, but there's 3D scanning software out there that you can use instead. There's also 360 photos you can take of your room if you're not looking to move around in it though. But that one's great. When you picked up the mug, can it be rotated?
Go for it, Ozzy.
Yeah. When you picked up the mug, can it be rotated for inspection? Yes, we did answer that. Yes, it can. And I showed that in action.
I saw one from Jessica that I thought was really good, sort of on the idea.
You can put it up on the screen. I'll read it.
So I'll fire it up here. If you develop a game or app using the Oculus SDK, do you have to start all over again in order to allow it to work with SteamVR, HTC? That's a really good question for the beginners in the audience.
No, for sure. Very good question, but you do not actually have to restart. The idea is this XR Interaction Toolkit, or OpenVR, works together. It's the classic program once, build twice scenario with Unity. That's kind of what Unity's goal is, right? So with the XR Interaction Toolkit, you're using their action system, and they will convert, you pick grip, and they will use what's called the hand trigger on the Oculus controller, the grip button on the Vive, the grip average on the index, and I don't remember what the Windows Mixed Reality equivalent was, but it'll handle that for you. Yeah.
Awesome.
Good question.
There was a good one here from Joe as well. I'm going to pop it up. Sort of similar to the LiDAR question, but perhaps slightly more complex. I'll let you into this one. So Joe asks, could I add a skybox with 360 video for its texture? I want to turn a 360 video of an actual physical classroom into an escape room.
That is so sick.
That's a cool idea.
Yeah, it is very cool. Yes, 100% you can do that. Matter of fact, can I drag and drop a file into here, into the chat?
You should be able to.
Text document.
I think you should be able to.
Okay, great. I am going to drop you in a little package here. Let me download that, and I will quickly send that in here. But yes, 100% you can do 360 video. You can do 360 images. You can transition between the images. We actually did a workshop on that exact topic. So Funny that you ask. That was my last workshop.
I think Dayon just dropped it into the chat there. So, Eric says it was a great workshop. Awesome. Well, glad to hear it. I saw a more recent one from John here from a little while ago. What do you use for more advanced mesh objects, i.e., non-convex meshes? Curious to hear your thoughts here.
Oh, sorry. Let me see if I can drag and drop this in there.
Okay.
Sorry. One sec. Okay, I can't. But dang it.
We can always include it in the email that goes out afterwards too, Ozzy.
Yep. We'll do that. So, what do you use for more advanced mesh, non-convex? Okay. So yeah, you bring in the 3D models. There's the FBX or OBJ files you want to use with Unity. FBX contain more data for you to use more things like separated objects, materials with animations and stuff. But when you use those, instead of using convex colliders, in an effort to save what you're doing there, what I recommend is you have two different meshes. One mesh is the actual 3D model, and it looks great. It's high quality. It's got a lot of polygons. But then you take that same mesh in your 3D modeling software and reduce the number of polygons. You decimate. I think decimate was the right term. You reduce the quality, reduce the number of polygons. It starts to look a bit more rough, but you use that as the mesh collider. So it does it'll do the job pretty much perfectly, but it won't take up as many polygons on the collider. So that's a common technique.
Awesome. Thank you, Ozzy. For the folks in the chat who are wondering, so Dayon dropped the link to the VR 360 Tours workshop. It's an online form, just almost exactly like you filled to attend today's workshop, except you'll get an on-demand version. So you'll be emailed the link to the recording. It looks like Dayon just mentioned that in the chat as well. Having a look here, we've got one more question, Ozzy, from Jessica. So I'm going to start the live answer here. Folks, if you do have any more questions, please toss them into questions tab. We still have about 5 minutes, so I think we can handle a few more. But Ozzy, Jessica asks, if you were developing an AR app for the Oculus, would you be able to utilize the pass-through function to interact with your real-world environment, blending real and virtual objects? So that's an interesting question. There's a couple things to tease out here.
So I believe, and Eric might be able to answer this better, but I believe, is this Eric from Circuit Stream? No, this isn't.
This is Eric, our current student, actually.
Okay. My mistake. So with that, Oculus themselves, Facebook, isn't actually allowing people to use their forward-facing cameras, at least to my current knowledge. I have to look into it again, but they haven't been allowing it. But yeah, if you could utilize those, that would be a really cool idea. It's just if you were developing an AR app, utilize. Yeah, I just don't think that they allow you to use the pass-through cameras for anything beyond you passing through the boundary and setting up your boundary. I don't think they let you access the imaging software there. It's for privacy issues.
Right, makes sense. Okay, well, unless there's any more questions from you guys in the questions tab, I think we've covered them all. And so, I think we're going to wrap up here. If there are any last minute things, please just, toss them in and we'll address them. But otherwise, I'd like to thank everybody for attending this afternoon. It was a pleasure to see such a great audience today. Oh, Ozzy's, you got something.
One more thing. So Scott mentions Leap Motion. I haven't tried Leap Motion, but Leap Motion may plug in to the USB slot, which is used for hand tracking. But honestly, Oculus Quest has built-in hand tracking, so you can use hand tracking and that utilizes the pass-through camera. Sorry, go ahead, Eric.
It's all good. I was just going to say, guys, Dayon just tossed a link into the chat there. If you want to continue the conversation, join our community Slack. It's totally free. It's over 30,000 strong folks that we've educated, as I mentioned earlier on. Please feel free to join that. Later on this week, we are going to be hosting another workshop. I believe it's on occlusions this coming Thursday. We've got one more scheduled before the holiday season for next week as well. Chris, you're very welcome. Great to see you again. Hope you're doing well and recovering as well. But for now, thank you all for attending. Thank you all for checking out our workshop on escape rooms today. It's a pleasure to have everybody join us, and we're going to sign off now. So have a good one, guys. Bye-bye.
Have a good one, guys. Thank you for coming.